This video is about the emotional impacts of the ongoing trans-genocide attempt and discusses transphobia, including as perpetuated and enacted by far-right groups and police. It includes mentions of sexual assault and murder. Please engage in whatever manner you feel is safest. You matter more than any video on the internet.
Would you like to take the deck? Just have a bit of a shuffle. The idea isn't so much to shuffle effectively, it's that the cards get to know you, a bit of your energy right now.
Sorry.
That's fine. Don't stress about it.
I'm scared of hurting them. So beautiful.
Yeah, I'm very happy with them. I reckon that'll do it. So have a look over the cards. When you feel ready, tap 3 of them that you feel called to you, and we'll just draw those 3 out. In the first position, we have the card of energy for you to release. Share wisdom. That's really interesting there. The next card is the energy for you to keep.
So I've lived and played on Wurundjeri country for basically my entire life now, except for the 3 years I spent on Wadawurrung country getting traumatized. Thanks, drama school. All of this is to say that I well and truly call this place home, and I love the city that I live in incredibly deeply. The city, which most of you probably know as Melbourne, Australia. So naturally, what went down here about a month ago did not sit well with me. In case you're not sure what I'm on about, on March 18th, 2023, Kelly Jane Keane Minchell, also known as Posey Parker, also known as the Soup Nazi, held a rally spouting anti-trans rhetoric here in my home city. Joining her at this rally were a number of self-proclaimed neo-Nazis who openly Sieg-Heiled and goose-stepped in our streets. Was it a surprise that fascists turned up to support a figure like Posey Parker? No. We've known of the affiliation for a while. I won't get into the history of the gender critical movement and its ties to fascism. Others have already made better videos than that topic than I can even dream of making, and that's not the purpose of why I'm speaking to you today. But needless to say, when we heard that she was planning to tour, one of the reasons that counter-protests were organised was because we expected the presence of the far-right and other hateful dickheads. So then was it the fact that the police present made no move to stop the explicitly fascist signalling going on in our streets that was so disappointing? I mean, again, it's kind of expected, like maybe a little more mask off than some of us were anticipating, but queer people have a deep distrust of police for a reason. It's kind of unsurprising that they would uphold the systems of power that oppress us. That's like their job. But it happened, and it didn't sit right with us. So a week later, on Trans Day Visibility, thousands of trans people and our allies marched from the State Library to those same Parliament steps that those hateful malicious fools had paraded around just a week earlier. We marched to reclaim our streets. We marched to remind ourselves that most people are on our side. We marched to be in community with each other. And we marched to send a message that we will not be scared away so easily. That we are here to stay. Show of strength, show of courage, show of numbers. We are many and we are right. Show of hands, show of hearts, show up proudly. We're not going anywhere. We shine so bright. Try to make us feel small, but you can't take us all. You try to make us feel scared, but we were so prepared to get up, 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 to get up and say, hey, this is not your space. It wasn't yesterday and it won't be tomorrow. Today it has been reclaimed, though it never went away. Felt weird for a moment, but not anymore. Not anymore. And never again. So given how well that rally went, why does something still not sit right with me? Why does the city that I've called home for most of my life still feel kind of off? I would say it's about that first rally. A city to me is much more about the people within it than the buildings or the events or the restaurants. It's the people that bring a place to life and give it its energy, and at that first rally, the people that I thought would have our backs did not show up. There weren't enough of us. On the 31st, people turned out in their thousands, but there were only a few hundred people there when things were more dire, and I guess the part that hurts the most is the fact that I wasn't there. I was in a different city entirely. Unable to be another body in space, able to do nothing but watch on social media as people in my community were getting thrown to ground by police, while people spread lies about us and advocated for our extermination, and that hurt so much, because I talk so much about community, about being there for each other, and when things really mattered. I was lying in bed watching videos on my phone. The march on the 31st helped me feel a little more at home again. Standing on those steps in the rain, surrounded by my siblings, I felt a weight lift off my chest. It wasn't entirely gone, but still it helped. A couple of days later, I got a message from a friend I hadn't spoken to in about a decade, my best friend from my high school years. It was full of some of the worst transphobic talking points. Nothing I hadn't heard before, but this time it hit differently, because it came from an unexpected place, a place very close to home. I was with friends when it happened, and they all advised me the same thing. Block, do not engage, but I felt like I could educate someone here. If I politely explained how she had been fed lies or was making assumptions, then maybe everything would be okay. I told myself I had an obligation to do such a thing, because I'm about as privileged a trans person as you can get. I'm far from those of us that get murdered from being trans. That's a fate usually reserved for black and brown trans women, and that's not me. We lost Ashley Burton earlier this week, and it wouldn't surprise me if there are others we've lost too that I just haven't heard about. But I don't have to fear violence like that, because on the street, I reckon most people, however incorrectly, would look at me and see a white woman. And that affords me safety that so many of my siblings do not have access to. If anyone was going to be able to turn this around, it would be me. An hour before I messaged back, I remember the tarot reading my friend Kat did for me on New Year's, the one that encouraged me to leave behind my propensity for sharing knowledge. I ignored that message, and instead spent an hour and a half trying to convince this ex-friend of mine that she was standing on the wrong side of history, and begging her to come stand with me instead. This friend, who was with me through my teen years, the times where I felt so inexplicably wrong, tried to convince me that the correct world is one where that wrongness should be forcibly placed upon all children. And eventually I had to accept that the conversation is futile. You can't expect someone to stand by your side in the fight for your human rights when they don't even see you as human. The conversation ended with her calling me a future Nazi or pedophile. The irony of that statement was sharp. How could I be a Nazi When the Nazis literally want people like me dead, how could I be a pedophile when trans people experience sexual assault at higher rates than cis people? How could I be a Nazi and be so proudly leftist? How could I be a pedophile when I'm literally asexual and afraid of being around children because the worst thing that I can imagine is doing something that might accidentally cause them harm? In the end, I have to see that comment for what it actually was. Empty name-calling, completely devoid of reality. Still, I had to do something to make home feel like home again. To stop my childhood memories from being completely poisoned. To get all of this off my chest so I could finally breathe once more. How do you reclaim something that's been used to hurt you? You reframe it. Associate it instead with good things. And you take steps to ensure that it can never hurt you again. The first thing to reclaim was the location of Parliament, and we marched upon that with great numbers. We made explicitly clear that the vast majority of people do stand with us. And now, when I think of that place, I will think of how loved and powerful I felt standing in that crowd in the misty rain. I also asked my friends for some of their favourite anti-fascist, protest or resistance songs. One of the easiest ways to speak to my heart is through music, so I started to collect the kinds of songs I needed to hear, and I've been learning some of them so I can have a sing anytime things start to feel rough, and anytime I need a reminder of those messages, they're just in me. And speaking of singing, one of the biggest things that defined my childhood was SingStar. Like, I own a lot of SingStar, and in an attempt to claw that association away from a particularly transphobic ex-friend of mine, I'm going to invite some trans friends over and we're going to have a little SingStar party. It'll be great. But that's all the personal reframing side about reclaiming these things for the good of myself as an emotional being. That's not the most important part, though. How do we ensure what happens on the 18th of March never happens again? How do we stop the people that would have us erased from public life from feeling like they're in the right?
In the position for what to seek and what to draw into your life and what to find within yourself. We have the warrior, which might be important in the future. You know, the time is over for talking and conversation and the sharing wisdom, which is so nice and pleasant and palatable. The warrior is this big sword. It is time to fight, to be more proactive. We've got sort of the sharing wisdom is subservient, possibly. The reclaiming is sort of firm and slightly defensive. And then the warrior fights.
Yeah.
And that fighting might not look like a physical sword, physically showing up, doing the things that people typically see as being a warrior, but it's about stepping forwards and seeking ways to create change and to push back against the world, however that looks to you, and the effort and work that you can do.
Yeah.
When our rights are under attack, what do? Stand up. Fight back. First things first, we need to stop succumbing to their demands. I'm looking at no one in particular. Counsellors? Drag events are being targeted, and so are schools who affirm that being trans is okay. We need to be louder than the people who would have these things destroyed. Now, I couldn't see that my high school was explicitly trans-affirming, so I sent them an email asking what they were doing to support their trans students and staff. Now, the cowards have not responded to me, and I would be naming and shaming, except I don't want to accidentally dox myself right now. Still, I think it's useful that places like that receive explicitly trans-affirming messages. Conservatives are not afraid to send emails full of hate and complaints and lies, like when it's super easy to send an email with some questions and support, like, why aren't we doing that? Like, all the time? I also plan to email the library service I hung out at all the time when I was a kid, and my local library service as well. Given that drag storytime events are so often the target of transphobic attacks, it only makes sense to offer some warmth and encouragement to libraries that are doing their part to support our community. And also just like, libraries are the best. They're the heckin' best. This is not the first time I've interrupted a video to rant about how great libraries are, and it will not be the last. Like, they have so many incredible social services and things you can have access to for free. Like, go show your library some love. Do it. Go down. They're amazing. This is all just like first steps, and honestly, it's still kind of defensive. But if I'm being frank, I don't think my local community is ready for those bigger, more systemically focused actions. Yet. The other thing we really need to do now is improve our capacity to fight back. If I was to try and guess why so few people turned up on the 18th of March, I would say it's one of these three things. Firstly, we're all burnt out as fuck. Like, all of us, trans people, the working class, where I assume most of our allies are, we're fighting on the daily just to survive, and so taking on other fights feels like a huge thing. Secondly, it's fucking scary to stand up to cops and fascists when we know their history of killing people in our communities. But what I potentially think is our biggest issue is we're disorganized as fuck. Like, there were people who messaged me after the events of the 18th who were like, oh my god, I would have so been there, but I just didn't know it was happening. And whether that's just a cop-out excuse or actually true, it is a problem if people who are interested in showing up to these events don't even know that they're on. So we need to take steps to counter these three things: burnout, fear, and disorganization. Here's some ideas and what I'm doing so far. It's just a start, but honestly, I would encourage anyone in my city to have a think about what you can do to address any of those 3 points. Heck, not even just in my city. Our rights are under attack globally, so anything you can do to build capacity and help your community get organized helps. To combat burnout, I'd suggest people turn their attention to helping community with their basic needs like food, housing, and healthcare. Is there a mutual aid fund that you can drop a few dollars into? Is there a local food serve that you can turn up and cook for? Is there a renters union that you can help campaign with? I personally got 2 things that I've added into my calendar that'll be like regularly scheduled things, help build out my routine. My autistic ass appreciates a routine, so why not fill it with things that help us fight burnout? Of course, I am time rich given the nature of the work I do, so that is a thing I might be able to do easier than others, but there's almost always something we can do to help the people in our community feel like they've got a little less of a load they're carrying. Maybe that's helping one of your friends with childcare, or maybe that's offering to go through the email backlog of a mutual aid group that's had their resources stretched too thin. I mentioned a renters union earlier, and this month's Praxis Town project is to look up what non-labour unions exist around you. Even in not getting involved, you may find resources that help you build your capacity to fight for a better world, which is great. And like that's the whole reason that me and other creators are encouraging this as a course of action this month. I might also add, like, this is not part of the spiel I'm supposed to go into, but like, maybe once you've got some of that sweet, sweet help, you can use that increased capacity to like help others with their shit, maybe. I know I'm not your dad, but I think it's a pretty good idea. By helping our communities meet their basic needs, we help free them up to fight other battles, like the ones our allies may be a few steps removed from and might not feel the urgency of. As for fighting fear, I'd say the biggest antidote would be to actually increase safety. Now, the easiest way to do that is to make sure that we heavily outnumber any would-be bad actors. When I went to the march on the 31st, I brought 6 cis friends with me, and I intend to do the same in terms of any future resistance. If you're cis and you're watching this, follow accounts of trans people in your area. They will let you know if something's going to happen. Show up and de-escalate things while you're there. Also, event producers. I'm gonna need you to start being realistic about the risks when you put on events. I'm not saying not to put them on. So far from saying that, actually. We really need queer-focused events for children right now. Like, that's actually really important, but have a plan for how to keep your performers and your audience safe, please. Like, actually really important, and I hate to say it, but you kind of need to expect the worst when it comes to threats and verbal harassment, so you don't get scared into cancelling your events. Like, please stop cancelling your events. This only emboldens those assholes further, and yeah, it's seriously pissing me off, because this shit is only going to get worse if we keep showing them that it works. Like, the only way they stop doing this is that they start to believe that they cannot win, and we know they cannot. So let's start fucking acting like it, please. And one more thing I can think of to combat fear is to seek and share joy. We need to celebrate the beauty of trans people wherever we see it, and we need to genuinely be proud of being trans, which is really hard to do right now, but I feel that way when I'm around other trans people. So that's something else I'm adding into my schedule, to regularly spend time with community, just to play and laugh and exist without acknowledging any of that shit. And lastly, disorganization. It's the one I feel least equipped to give advice on, to be honest, but I think a step that we can all take is to make sure that we're all staying connected with each other, and to make sure that we're not letting little mistakes or differences get in the way. We also need to use the systems that are already built, like unions and leftist collectives, to help us in these fights. And anytime we take any resistance efforts, let's make sure we're bringing the interested but disengaged people in our circles too. I'm still new to fighting back, so I may not have the most developed ideas, but reclaiming, that's something that's been essential to my survival for a very long time, and it's something that I'm going to need to keep doing if I have any hope of becoming the warrior my communities need me to be. The tarot reading that Kat and I reenacted for you actually happened in the first few hours of the year. Like, I'm not making it up. Like, those are the cards that came up in that order and the framing that was assigned to them, and like, I think it's kind of hilarious. But I interpreted it to mean that I need to rely much less on politely educating people. Like, not that I should completely stop, but I shouldn't rely on it as my only means of pushing back. If I want my siblings to feel safe, if I want them to feel loved and proud of who they are, then I need to start actively fighting the systems that oppress us. Making this video has been slow because it's been hard, but it has been so important for helping me reclaim my youth, reclaim my city. Now that they feel right again, it's time to properly start fighting. To get up, 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 to get up and reclaim our city, reclaim our streets, reclaim tomorrow, get on our feet and fight for our siblings, get others to fight too, because we're many and you're few, this place belongs to us and not to you. Felt weird for a moment, but not anymore, not anymore, and never again.